All right, it's
Good evening,
buffering.
everybody. This is Morbid. You're listening to the Pulpit of Doom podcast for DreaminDemon.com, and with me tonight I have Jaded and Old Man Metal.
Hello.
How y'all doing?
Hope everybody's having a great weekend. So far, everything's going off without a hitch at the moment, so we'll see if it stays that way. Welcome to anybody who's tuned in. If this is your first time coming into this particular podcast, this is the official podcast of DreaminDemon.com, where normally we talk about the top 10 horrible stories that we reported on over the last week, which usually branches out into completely asinine areas. We had a pretty good week this week, though.
We did have some good stories.
Yeah, we got some good ones. So go ahead and knock some of these out of the way. There's a couple. I went and checked on a good handful of these for updates, and there were a couple that had some minor ones, but nothing too major. But we'll go ahead and get to the first one at least. This is the one out of Illinois. Was your typical child abuse story where a man was left to watch after. And I don't know what the relations are to these particular family members, but a man was left to watch his 18-month-old niece and her siblings, and ended up beating the crap out of her because she was crying. So he employed that tactic of beating the shit out of her. She lived, which is a big bonus on our site, that she actually lived through the beating. But what caught my attention is that he had broke her leg in half, and that's why I initially even started writing the story up.
And that made me wince when I read that part.
Well, normally, right, when these types of stories happen, and the kid lives or dies, and there's bones broken, there's a myriad of different ways that they can have that happen to them, because, one, they're so young. It was the way the guy did it. It wasn't in the first article I found when I first wrote it up. It just said, basically, she had injuries that included the broken leg, broken arm, and bleeding on the brain. His excuse was she had fell off a couch, with one of the ones that we've heard a million times before. The old mean old couch. Got another one, but obviously the doctors, when they took her to the hospital, knew that was a bunch of shit, and confronted him over the injury she had, and he ended up admitting that he had beat on her because she wouldn't stop crying. So, but it was another article, and I was doing some more digging. I found exactly what he had done, and that's when I was like, holy shit, man. So, normally when you have these particular stories, they don't really go into too much detail on how the injuries were done. You can kind of tell just from the injuries how they may have been caused. But this one, he was pretty descriptive with what he actually did. And I'm just going to read this from the article itself, but it said that his name, by the way, is Kahllus Adams. Kahllus, Kahlus.
I was reading it callous.
Could be, well, might as well be.
Definitely is callous.
He looks like a nice guy. He just doesn't look like a callus. Looks more like
not at all.
A Chad. But anyway, here's what he did. It said first he threw a full sippy cup at her face, then he picked her up by her arms and feet, like I guess like a helicopter, like the airplane thing you do with kids. Picked her up by her arms and feet, swung her around, and threw her in the air, causing her head to strike a wall and a freezer. So she ping-ponged a bit, and that's probably obviously where the bleeding on the brain came from. So when the girl began, quote-unquote, shaking severely, he grabbed her leg and twisted it until he snapped her femur in two.
And that takes a hell of a lot of torque to do, even a little kid like that. The femur is tough.
But isn't that nuts? Because when at first, when I was first thinking about it, I was like, okay, so he chopsticked her, right? He grabbed her leg and he snapped it, but that's not what he did. He twisted it, which means, would that not be a spiral? That nasty ass spiral fracture you never want?
I don't know.
I think that's what it is. I mean, I think, and obviously, I mean, of course, I've had a lot of medical training, being a doctor and
Take a look
everything.
at the take a look at the chat in Discord real quick.
Yeah. Oh, don't tell me they can't hear anything.
Well,
Well, one here's an echo.
Alf was saying there was an echo a few minutes ago, but now BB's saying he doesn't hear anything. Oh, but he's listening on Discord, so never mind.
Oh, never mind.
As you were, my bad.
Anyway, so it's like when you have a break in your bone. Of course, you kind of want it to snap into if you're going to have a break, right? Because then it's just a clean break, and then you can put that back together fairly easily. I had always heard it was that spiral type fracture where you get the splintered bone and all that kind of stuff that makes it harder to put together.
I don't want either kind of break, to be honest with you. But yeah, one sounds worse than the other, I guess.
Right, and if anybody's listening, I don't know what they mean by listening on Discord, but this is if you're wanting to listen, this is on YouTube.
Yeah,
It's streaming on YouTube. If you want to join in and talk about anything, then by all means join up in the green room where BB is right now, and we can bring you onto the show if that's why you're in the green room. If you don't want to be on the show, I would not join the green room because we can. We might pull you in unexpectedly if you didn't want to be there. So anyway, Mr. Adams pled guilty to the charges, and I think some people were either pleased or upset with the sentence that he got, because this happened like last year, and over the course of this year, I guess there's been a bunch of legal wrangling going on back and forth, but he ended up pleading guilty to, what were the charges he got charged with? It wasn't child abuse. It was, 3 counts. That's it. 3 counts of aggravated battery to a child causing great bodily harm. And he pleaded guilty to the charges, and the agreement he worked out was that he would serve all 3 30-year sentences concurrently, but he has to serve at least 85% of the sentence before he's eligible for release.
That's a pretty hefty sentence.
Well, that's what I was saying. I thought that was a pretty good sentence. Well, I mean, if it had it up to me, if it was up to me, of course, you just put him away for forever. But going by what we normally see with sentencing, even with stuff even more heinous than this.
Well, especially after his bond amount. The $10,000 bond doesn't say it's serious enough to get the 3 consecutive 30-year sentences.
And I wasn't for sure if that was posting his $10,000 bond, or maybe that's how much he posted towards his bond. You know how sometimes you get a bond and you can post a certain percentage of it to get out.
Yeah.
Usually 10%.
Right. So I didn't know. The article wasn't real clear on that. Nowhere did I see $100,000. So I just reported it as I saw it.
Right.
But yeah.
Makes sense.
So anyway, yeah, he beat the crap out of her, but luckily she survived it. I'm gonna do some looking up on that spiral fracture thing though. I know I'm right about that. I don't know why I remember that for, but makes sense anyway.
We remember weird shit.
Yeah, true. Have you ever broke a bone?
In my toe.
Oh God,
Yeah,
I meant
it
like
hurt
a
really bad.
real injury.
It was real. It was really real. They called it a shear. That's what happened to it. It sheared.
A sheared? So like how did you do it?
I don't want to talk about it.
Oh my God, was it stupid?
It had to do with seagulls and a patio door.
So it was stupid.
It was fucking hilarious, okay? Now that I can look back on it, yes, it was hilarious, but yeah, it was stupid. Don't fucking run out of french fries when you're feeding seagulls.
That's what it was? You got chased by seagulls?
Yeah.
And you ran into a sliding glass door?
Yeah.
And you sheared your toe?
I did.
How do they even fix it? I thought if you break a toe, there's nothing you can do.
Well, I only went to the emergency room because I thought there was like a piece of bone sticking out of it, but it was really just skin. Because I scraped it too, but I thought for sure that was bone. And so I went to the emergency room and they're like, "Oh, just tape it."
Yeah, I
So
think that's
that's what I
it.
Yeah,
did.
there's not a whole hell of a lot you can do. I've broken more damn toes than I can count. I'm really bad
But
about kicking stuff that I got no business kicking. Usually not even on purpose. I just bump into shit and break a toe. So
well,
it
I had
sucks.
this shear, and then that little teeny tiny little top bone at the top of your middle, your third toe in, that was dislocated.
Huh.
That was hurt. It hurt.
No, no, they don't feel good. I don't know if I've ever broke any of my toes, but I know I've stubbed them hard enough where I'm pretty sure that I did.
Yeah.
Like I did one so bad that I literally I just wanted to, and I may have actually cried. It was so bad because
You just
it
kind of want
was
to die.
yeah, well, it was that typical. I was walking out of a room, and my big fat fucking monkey feet, the pinky, snagged the side of a door frame as I was kind of half jogging out of a room,
Yeah,
and the pain when I it was that pain you knew how bad it was going to hurt by how long you didn't feel it. And after I done it, it was like 5 seconds of like no pain whatsoever, and you're like, "Oh wow, this is gonna be bad." And then it comes in like a wave. Suck.
I don't know why hearing you in pain just makes me fucking laugh.
Oh, they loved when my brother pushed me off a console stereo and I broke my
Oh
arm.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was a
that
good
would have
one,
been funny.
bastard. He's a little evil omen motherfucker to do something like that. You know why?
I
This will
had
make you laugh even more. Why it was so bad. We were standing up on top of a console stereo. We like to jump off of it, and we were wearing fucking feety pajamas.
you just slid right the hell off.
Yeah, and when he pushed me, I slid because of those stupid feety pajamas. I slid off and felt awkward, so I couldn't just land on my feet. I did something stupid in the air, I guess, and I landed on my arm some weird way and snapped it.
I
Sounds
so
like
wish I could
sounds like
share
something
with
out of
you
a
what it looks
Christmas
like in my
story.
head.
Yeah, I still rag him. It was such a psychopathic thing to do to somebody. Anyway, all right, we'll move on here to Anchorage, Alaska. This was 23-year-old Stephanie, I want to say LaFountain, but since it's Anchorage, Alaska, I don't know if it's LaFontaine. I have no idea. But Stephanie got in some trouble when she called in to report that her 13-month-old daughter wasn't breathing. The kid was taken to the hospital, died 4 days later, and it was determined later that the girl had died from lack of oxygen to the brain. Kind of was raising some red flags already, I think, because they started looking into her past, and lo and behold, it turns out that this was almost identical to 2015 when she lost her 4-month-old daughter in the exact same way. And with the first girl, with a different man, there was no foul play was suspected, so not much was done with it. But of course, after the second one from a different man dies in a very similar fashion, of course they started doing some digging. The autopsy said that both children showed that they were entirely healthy with no genetic abnormalities, no diseases, and no injuries. So they did some digging around on her computer to find her internet connection, and this stupid bitch, man.
Right.
I mean, we get some dumb ones, and she definitely ranks up there. She very well could have gotten away with this because if they had taken her to court on this, that'd have been one hell of a burden of proof in regards to the prosecutors trying to prove that she murdered these two children, right? But with her internet search history now in their hands, they found that in the days before her daughter was dead, the more recent daughter, she was doing searches for things like best ways to suffocate, ways to kill human with no proof, 16 steps to kill someone and not get caught. And that one got me because did she hear about this or did she just
Well,
choose
that's
the
pretty
16?
specific.
That's very specific.
Step 16 is erase your search history, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, how to commit the perfect murder. I'm actually going to do a quick search on 16 steps to kill. Oh, I'll be damned. I found it.
Never get in trouble.
Yep,
What is it?
it's on Thought Catalog. And just if anybody's following along, I'm going to I'm gonna post a link if anybody wants to see the article that she was looking at. It was an article written by Juliet Escoria in 2013. Here's some. Keep in mind that extreme heat speeds up the rate of decomposition. Don't kill anyone you're involved with romantically. Don't bring your cell phone. I've already thought when I always do these how to commit a perfect murder scenarios in my head, and the cell phone, obviously you don't want to take it with you, but it can be your perfect alibi. So I've got a perfect way to do that I can't give out here in case I actually pull it off. Somebody's going to bring this podcast up.
And then they're going to look through your search history.
Oh, if they look through my search history, I am screwed anyway.
You're gone.
You're done.
Oh, yeah, I'm done.
That's the way I behave.
Well, hold on. I'm sorry.
Well, one of the interesting things about this one to me is the fact that she got away with it once and did the same thing and then got caught, which, you know, is a lot of people get caught the first time. A lot of people probably do it once and never do it again. It sort of reminded me of Blanche Taylor Moore. She was a lady that was actually from North Carolina, Alamance County, North Carolina. And this was back in the mid 80s. She poisoned her boyfriend with arsenic, and they, based on them finding out about that, they went back and looked at. I believe it was an ex-husband that they went back and exhumed. And arsenic obviously doesn't go away. You can find arsenic and remain centuries later. But it was the same type thing though. She got away with it and did the same thing. And once they catch you on that one, they go back and start looking. They're like, okay, well, this person's done this more than once, and you end up paying for all of it.
Well, the interesting thing about this one, I thought, aside from her stupidity, is the fact that they are going to charge her with the deaths of both of her daughters. So she was arrested on Friday, and she's being held on $2 million bail. But could there not be the possibility? I guess because if you don't have all that internet search shit that they didn't search for last time.
Exactly.
I was thinking that maybe the first one did actually die of some type of natural or like an accidental cause or something, and then here comes around the second one, and she's like, oh wow, I can get a clean slate again, and that's why she started doing these searches. Because my only question was, if I was her defense attorney, that's what I'd probably do. You probably couldn't get off for killing the second kid, but the first one you might be able to, because why would she be searching for these things again? She already knows how to do it. If she killed the first one in the same way.
That's a good point.
I was just thinking about that while we were sitting there talking about it. So, and again, these search terms were the ones that were found prior to her second daughter. At least that's the way I read it. I don't know. I guess you might have search history still going back 2 years or 3 years. I guess maybe. I don't know. Depends on. I don't know what the default is for caching that in your browser is. I clean mine fairly regularly, but I don't know what the. And incognito is your friend. I don't know why anybody wouldn't use that anyway.
There you go.
Well, you know.
There you go. Don't be giving people tips. Run out of shit.
Well, that's never going to happen.
Let's see here. Yep, that's it for her. The next one is, this was that really good one out of North Carolina. This was that I guess he was a sexual predator of some type. Who ended up having to pay a pretty hefty fine to one of his victims.
Yeah. So in October of 2014, the Cary, North Carolina Police Department started an investigation into folks sharing kiddie porn using file sharing programs. It was a joint investigation with the feds under the Project Safe Childhood Initiative. And one of the fish that they caught was this fella, Adam Jeffrey Frankel, with his funky, fresh tribal facial tats. What a winner, this guy. So he got popped in February 20th, 2015, and was indicted on the 24th of March, were arraigned on the 20th of April. So they moved it right along. And I think it was because of the magnitude of what he was doing. When they searched his house, they found the mother lode. He had over 136,000 pieces of kiddie porn. That's a shit ton. How many files have you got on your computer? 10,000, 12,000, 15,000? That is just a bunch. He was big time. And then they also found out that he was actually soliciting underage girls to make videos of themselves performing sex acts. So he wasn't just a mass distributor of this stuff. He was actually a manufacturer. And the original charges were 6 counts of second-degree sexual exploitation of a minor, under North Carolina General Statute 14-190.17, which is recording, photographing, filming, developing, duplicating, distributing, transporting, exhibiting, receiving, selling, purchasing, exchanging, or soliciting material that contains a visual representation of a minor engaged in sexual activity. So basically anything but daydreaming about kiddie porn. And interestingly enough, if you look at that code, it doesn't really always matter if the subject of the material actually is a minor. If there's a title or text or whatnot in the material that represents the subject to be a minor, that's all it takes. It could be a model that's over 18, but if they say daddy's little girl and that's what they make it look like, then you can get nailed for that. It also doesn't matter if you thought they were of legal age. If you look at them and you're like, well, there's no way that's an underage woman or an underage girl. That's not a defense that it exactly says that in the statute. So the other interesting thing was, even though he was charged with violating state law, the prosecution was handled by an assistant U.S. attorney in a U.S. district court. And I got to imagine that's part of the Safe Childhood Project initiative. It looks like the feds maybe handle the prosecution for the states, which means the states save a lot on administrative costs. Of course, that means it's paid for with federal dollars, so all of us paid on this one. So I guess North Carolina, need to say thanks to Florida, Alabama, and Idaho for helping us out, paying for that. So Frankel took a plea deal in December of 2017. He pled to a single consolidated charge, and that's a pretty common plea deal. It saves the government money because they don't have to try the person, and it gave Frankel a chance that maybe he'll live long enough to get out of prison, because he got 21 and a half years. And so after that, he gets 10 years of supervised probation. But it's conceivable that he lives long enough to get out, pleading the way he did and consolidating the charges. And the hook for me was he also had to give up his house to make victim restitution. So if he does make it to 55, which is questionable, to me doesn't look that tough, even with the stupid facial tats. But if he does live long enough to get out, he doesn't have anywhere to go. Maybe live under a bridge or at mom's or something like that. And authorities were able to identify one of the direct victims, so to speak, one of the manufacturing charges, and she got $250,000. There's another $43,500, and they're going to split that three ways among three victims that they identified of the other porn that he didn't produce. So they figured out who three of the kids were in that other porn, and they're going to get a share too. So kind of interesting. I don't know how common it is to do victim restitution in cases like that, but I don't remember seeing it very often. So that was kind of cool. Obviously won't make up for what happened to the kids, but at least he doesn't have a house. He doesn't need it anyhow, so screw him.
I've not seen that before. I'm not saying it hasn't happened before, but I know we haven't reported on anything where a suspect had to pay back money directly to a victim or give up a house, specifically property. I don't remember it. Do you, Jaded? I can't think of anything.
No, I don't.
When they did the search that had the kiddie porn on it, so they're going to keep that. I'm sure that's a pretty standard thing. But I thought it was kind of unusual that they did the seizure like that. And I'm trying to look now. I had looked it up. I linked it in the comments at the bottom of the article because I knew I'd end up wanting to see it. So the seizure was done by this federal judge. James Beaver was the judge's name, and it was part of the plea agreement. So I guess that was something that they negotiated with him, is we're going to take the house and you're going to pay these people. It doesn't look like it was a final order of forfeiture pursuant to a federal code. So I don't know, but they definitely took the house, and like I said, he doesn't need it. He's going to be busy.
Yeah, I'm down with it.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, they do it with they take money from so many people they shouldn't be taking money from. It'd be nice to see someone that deserves to lose their money lose it.
Yeah,
every once in a while.
I agree. I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. Let's see here. Mount Vernon, Washington. I had a lot of Washington lately.
Yeah, don't say.
This was the story of 27-year-old Vanessa Cons was living with Timothy Hernandez, 32, and their 3-year-old daughter, and they were living at her boyfriend's parents' home. And last Sunday, her parents went to go to church and said that they heard the couple arguing. But when they came back home from church, their son and granddaughter were gone, but Vanessa was still there, laying on the floor in a bedroom with her head cut off and balanced on her back. So they called police, who came in and obviously found that Vanessa had been murdered, had multiple stab wounds to her back and back of her head and back of her neck, and her head had been cut off and set on her back by, obviously, her boyfriend, Timothy Hernandez, who they found nearby at a shopping mall with his granddaughter. And he freely admitted, with his daughter, but he freely admitted to him.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, with his daughter, sorry. But he freely admitted that he was the one responsible, that he had killed Vanessa because God, that rascally rabbit, had told him to. He said that Vanessa would not repent, and he spouted out some Bible verses in regards to what you do to those evil people who don't repent.
You cut their head off.
You cut their head off, and you set their head on their back. Even more so, supposedly, from what the police are saying, is he did this in front of their daughter, and after he was done, he made the little girl go and say goodbye to mommy. And the little girl had said she did so and did not understand why her mom's eyes were closed and why there was blood on her face. So anyway, he was arrested and charged. He says he's not crazy because crazy people don't admit to what they had done.
Yeah, good luck making that work.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, if he truly believes that God told him to do this, which I have no doubt he probably does think God told him to do this, then no matter what they do to him, he's not going to really care too much because all of it's going to be in some grand scheme part of God's plan.
Part of the inscrutability of the divine,
right?
That we hear so much about.
Yeah. I always find these interesting when you have the people that do what God told them to. I know we made multiple jokes about it before in regards to they never tell them to do something cool like cut your neighbor's grass or something. It's always kill somebody.
Give someone an ice cream cone or something.
Right. And then when you actually go back and you look at the history of God and what God has instructed people to do, it's always been killing people. So it really isn't out of his wheelhouse to instruct somebody to do something like this. So.
And people jump. He says, make the one-headed Bacchosaurus out of your girlfriend. They're making the one-headed Bacchosaurus.
Oh, yeah. He didn't seem to have any remorse over this at all. And this is kind of the odd thing for me. I'm just saying, if I truly thought that God was talking to me and it was instructing me to do some things that made absolutely no sense whatsoever, I'd probably, if it's God saying it and telling you to do it, and it's just a weird situation to me that if somebody truly believes God is telling them to do this stuff, you see what I'm saying? It's like when people read the stories in the Bible.
No, I don't. Because I don't do what anybody tells me to do.
Yes, but you've got different voices. I'm talking about if it was actual.
Yes, I don't do what they tell me to do. One of them could be God. You don't know.
I'm saying is
don't judge my voices.
Let's talk it this way then. From a Christian standpoint, which I am wholeheartedly am not one. I'm just saying if you are a Christian and you believe in the Bible and that everything in it is true, right? Well, there's stories in there, multiple stories, where God has instructed people to do some really, really weird stuff, even weirder than killing people. So, but they accept that's what happened, and that's why they did it, because it was under the instructions of the God Almighty. So, when
totally justifiable.
Well, I'm getting at is when did they stop thinking that stuff happened? I doubt I would read this story to a Christian and they will actually believe that God told him to saw off his girlfriend's head and set it on her back.
In fact, they would probably say God would never tell anyone to do anything.
That's exactly what they would say. So I always just found that a little bit of an odd thing, to where I wonder where that stopped, where Christians no longer believe that God tells people to kill people. I don't know.
It's a good question.
Well, because we had another one. There was another story that happened as well that we reported on from that you wrote up about somebody else that did something very similar.
Yeah, up in Wisconsin, there was a fella that walked into the police station in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, and starts telling the cops that his son was dead, and the reason that his son was dead was because they had been fasting. It was a religious thing. He told them that he was a minister in a church, which when they checked into it, they found out that the church didn't exist and there was no proof that he was a minister. But he told them that they had done this fast and that his son was dead. And, you know, going back to what you were saying, fasts are part of normal organized religion. There are a lot of people who are parts of major religions that fast at various times of the year for various reasons. They starve themselves for the Lord or whichever particular God they happen to be worshiping. But this one started on July 17th. So these people it was like 40 days in the desert for them, not having any food. So the cops go back to this guy's house, and all the doors are padlocked from the inside. They have to break into the house, and they get in there. There's no food, no furniture, no cookware, no pots, no pans, no dishes, no personal hygiene items even. I was thinking, does that mean that they didn't have toilet paper? I don't know if toilet paper is a personal hygiene item or not, but that would be right fucked to be in there for 40 days with no toilet paper. But so they find...
Don't matter.
Well, that's true. After a certain point, I guess you'd stop needing it.
Yeah.
So they got a dead 15-year-old who'd starved to death. They found an 11-year-old boy who was too weak to talk or walk, and his wife, who was emaciated as hell. If you look at these people's pictures, they look like they haven't eaten in 40 days. I mean, they look like they're both about to die. The 11-year-old was too weak to talk. Think about that. How the hell weak do you have to be? You're talking about a kid that's about dead, and you know, for all we know, the kid's not even going to survive. They haven't said, but if you're that far gone, you know, they may be able to bring you back. They may not. So they took the kid to the hospital, took the parents to jail. They're eating now. And that was the story, but it was the same thing. God had told him to not eat. And what he told him was that they were waiting for a signal from God to start eating again. And they didn't get the signal until last Friday, August 31st, which is the day that the son died. So, you know, if God had been a little quicker, then maybe they could have got that kid a Big Mac and he wouldn't have died. But
I think that was the sign. That was the sign. Your kid's dead. Now go eat.
Right. Could be.
He might have been busy with somebody else doing, you know.
He was busy with this other dude sawing off his girlfriend's head.
Yeah, he was busy giving the Bacchosaurus command to this other idiot.
He needs a secretary.
He needs help, clerical help. Yeah, but, you know, absolutely, to your point, I mean, he's been telling people to do horrible shit since he told Abraham to cut Isaac's throat and burn him up. And Isaac was going to do it, too. I mean, if you've been to Sunday school, you know that story. Isaac had the knife ready to whack that kid, or not Isaac, Abraham, rather, had the knife ready to whack that kid. And God said, no, wait, never mind.
Here's the funny thing that a lot of people don't realize, and somebody can cross-check me on this, but the whole time I've ever been told that story about Abraham's son, I always envisioned that Abraham's son was a little kid. I think I even saw pictures of a little kid, but I think that Abraham's son was 30-something.
Well, they lived to be like 850 back then, so
yeah,
you know,
but
30 was kind of young.
That changes the whole thing, though, right? I mean, he was actually taking a grown man. It was his son for sure, but it wasn't a little kid.
Right.
Somebody check me on that, please, if I'm wrong about that. But I'm pretty sure I remember that being one of those eye-openers where I was like, huh? Holy shit, I always thought it was a little kid that he carried up there and laid on some stone altar and was about to stick him with some steely knives or whatever. But no, it was like a full-grown adult that he took up there to do that.
They used to be really obedient back then. Really, really obedient.
They took their sacrificing very seriously back then. There's another story in the Bible, and I think it's in Judges, and I can't remember the fucking guy's name. It's a really weird name. But he did something similar, although he wasn't necessarily instructed by God. he made an oath to God that if he were to win some type of battle or some type of war, that he would sacrifice the first person that walked through his home when he returned, or walked through the front door of his home when he returned home, and it happened to be his daughter. And
wow.
right, and so and those sacrifices were burning sacrifices. They set them on fire, and she was like, "Oh shit," and he's like, "Oh shit," and she was like, "Well, hey, look, man, before you do this, can you give me some odd amount of time?" It was like maybe 10 days or something to mourn my virginity. And so he was like, "Yeah, cool, daughter, I'll let you do that." And she did. And then theoretically, they don't detail him actually setting her on fire, but they do mention that for years after that, the women of that town or that village would pay homage to that girl at the site where she was sacrificed. Now, I don't know why I even know that. I just remember it. I also remember that odd story about that I always used to like to bring up to people when God would do some really weird stuff, was the kids that kept making fun of the guy's bald head. I don't know if you heard of that one, but these kids used to make fun of this bald man's head and call him bald head or something like that. And God's like, "Yeah, you're going to make fun of my dude." He goes, "Well, here, enjoy this." And he sent a bear in who went and ate and killed the kids.
Damn.
I always thought that was one of the most awesome stories in the Bible. I thought that was really cool.
Back in the Old Testament, he would smite your ass. You didn't mess with him. New Testament, he got a lot nicer. But Old Testament, you didn't mess with that.
He was kind of absent in the New Testament, and that's why I always found the New Testament very boring. It was kind of like the have a Coke and a smile part of the Bible, not counting the Revelation stuff. But
right,
it was.
It's really dark at the end.
Yeah, which I could get into that, but I won't. But yeah. It just didn't hold my interest like the Old Testament did, where all the murder happened. That's where all the good stories were in the Old Testament. He did some really, really odd things for a well, I don't want to say for a god, but for the God that I was being told existed. This loving, grandfathery, Santa Claus-looking fella. That's not the God I was reading about in the Old Testament. That one was actually kind of a psychopathic badass.
He was grim too, man.
Yeah. But yeah, Old Testament's a good read. I always liked that book. Let's see here. This one was out of New Mexico, Aztec, New Mexico, where two teenage girls have been charged with child abuse after they recorded themselves abusing an 8-year-old boy with Down syndrome. So, a lot of proud parents out there in New Mexico today, I bet. But these two girls, I guess, were babysitting this woman's 8-year-old son. He can't talk, and he has Down syndrome, which, you know, if you've ever seen anybody with Down syndrome, that's probably one of the hardest people I could think of to pick on. I mean, they seem very agreeable. So
very generally very nice, very pleasant, happy-go-lucky people. It seems like.
I mean, at least from the ones I've seen on TV. Don't know any personally, but they don't seem like anybody you necessarily want to pick on. But these two girls were doing it while they were babysitting him, and it was like a year later. They must have shown the videos to a friend of theirs, and that friend was like, "What the fuck are you girls doing?" And she sent the videos to the boys' parents. And obviously you can imagine the shock they went through, because they had no earthly idea any of this was going on. And some of the abuse that was recorded, well, I'll jump ahead of myself there. The parents contacted the police, and the police arrested the two girls. They saw the video, and they've already charged them. But now their sentencing or their court date's coming up, and the parents are afraid that they're going to get off very lightly for what they had done. So they took it upon themselves to start posting some of the videos online, hence why it's now in the news. And
they took it to the streets, modern style.
That's it. And so the two videos they released were supposedly two of the lesser of the antics that the girls had been up to. And one of the videos, which I'll show here in a second, is one of the girls coaxing the boy into taking a hit off of a bong. And then another one, which was actually kind of brutal, Not that the kid got really hurt. And obviously these injuries weren't like very physical injuries because the parents didn't even notice anything. Or if they did, they may have been so minor it could have come from just any type of play. It was just the point of it, that what they were doing and why they were doing it. But the second video, which I'll also show, one of the girls throws an empty water jug. It looks like one of those water jugs you put on like a water cooler thing. She throws an empty jug at the kid and just hits him right in the damn face. He's already outraged just at those two videos, but the mother says that there's others, ones where they're slamming doors in the boy's face, but the one that got me, and the one I'm curious if they're going to release, is she says they record themselves holding him down and shoving a popsicle down his throat where he can't breathe. So, I thought that one was kind of crazy. I mean, the fact that they're fucking with a boy in any manner is fucked up. But the levels that they were doing it at was kind of odd. But, hold on one second. I know you guys are kind of on a delay. I'm going to play this video real quick so people can see what we're talking about.
Cool.
They are disgusting videos of two teen babysitters abusing an 8-year-old boy with Down syndrome. They coaxed the boy into taking a hit from a bong. As News 13's Madeline Schmidt reports, it is those videos that did the babysitters in.
Well, Kim, two videos are circulating on social media, sparking outrage in the Aztec community. A warning, they are difficult to watch, but the mom of this boy tells us there's even more videos the public hasn't seen that are worse.
He's the most loving, caring little boy, and it disgusts me that they could do this to him, especially while one of them being pregnant herself.
Bryson's mother, Amanda Greenhouse, requested that News 13 show these videos in full without editing. The first, according to police, is of Bryson being forced to smoke a bong while in the care of babysitters Lindsay Moss and Dallas Barron, both now 19. The second, again involving Moss and Barron, is one of them throwing an empty 5-gallon water jug at Bryson's head while the other recorded it with her cell phone. Police say the videos were made last year, but it wasn't until June of this year that their friends, who couldn't believe what she was seeing, sent the videos to Bryson's father, who then called police. Bryson's distraught mother told us today that her son can't speak and she had no idea this horrific abuse was taking place. She also said 3 more videos exist. 2 are of doors being slammed on Bryson's face.
The other one is of them shoving a popsicle down his throat, wherein they're holding it there when he can't breathe.
Despite Barron and Moss being arrested in June, just days after police saw these videos, Bryson's dad posted the videos on Facebook this week, along with a lengthy post about exposing Barron and Moss. His post prompted numerous calls to the Aztec Police Department. Police then had to use social media to clarify that both young women have already been charged with child abuse. Kim, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Madeline.
She pulled the carb on him and everything.
Yeah, I forgot to add that when he posted those videos on Facebook, of course, the community went crazy and started contacting the police department. And but the police department had already arrested these girls like after they had gotten the video. They were already arrested, so they had to come out and use social media to actually come out and say, hey, look, dudes, guys, we got it. This is already being handled. And obviously that's not the parents' concern. The parents' concern is that they're not going to suffer any real punishment for what they had done.
Right. The parents want to get everyone riled up to lean on the authorities so that they get the result that they want.
And it'll work.
That makes sense.
And it will work.
I mean, sure.
We did some fucked up stuff when we were kids, God knows. I mean, and we were mean little shits like, you know, probably everybody was when they were teenagers. But, man, I don't think I ever remember physically abusing mentally disabled kids.
Well, there's a huge age disparity here, too.
That is true. That is true. We're not even talking about peers.
We're not talking anywhere near peers. 19, that's, kids pick on kids, and, that's just the way it is. But these are 19, 20-year-old girls, or 19-year-old anyhow. That's way more than old enough to know better than to pick on a kid that young, regardless of what disabilities they might have, but especially, in this case.
Now, them girls are doing shit I could imagine Jaded doing when she was their age.
Ruthless.
To my sister. That doesn't count.
That is true. It really doesn't.
No, it really doesn't.
So there we go.
Las Vegas, Nevada. I tried to do an update on this one, or at least look to see if there was one, and there isn't. This is 20-year-old Cassie, I guess Cassie Smith, who called 911 to tell police that she had lost track of her 3-year-old Daniel Theriot. She was at Sunset Park feeding ducks, and when she took her eyes off of him to use the phone, she turned around, the kid was gone, and she was freaking out. So police came out and did some searching, brought in some volunteers. Everybody was searching around. They wouldn't let people out of the park. They started questioning people, and red flags started getting raised when the people said they don't remember ever seeing her out there with a kid, and they definitely don't remember her frantically looking for anybody out at the park. So they immediately started suspecting that this was more than met the eye, and those suspicions were confirmed about 12 hours later. No, I'm sorry, the following morning. I don't know how long it was, but I think they searched over the night, and then the following morning they found Daniel's body near Lake Mead National Recreation Area. Now, I didn't look on the map how far Sunset Park was from Lake Mead National Recreation Area, or if Sunset Park is a part of that. I'm not sure. I didn't look. I should have looked just out of my own curiosity, but I didn't. But regardless, they found the kid dead, and they haven't said how he was killed, but they are saying that he was murdered, and that from the looks of him, there was no doubt that whatever happened to him had been physical. Somebody had murdered this kid. And they also said that they are pretty sure that he had been dead up to 12 hours before Smith ever reported him missing. So they arrested her, and they arrested her 40-year-old boyfriend, Josh Oxford, and they removed a 2-year-old, I guess, which was Daniel's brother, out of the house and took him to the hospital because he had physical abuse signs on him as well. And that was pretty much it for the story, that they're both behind bars. They're both being charged with the murder of Daniel. And, I'm sorry, at the time I wrote this, the murder charges were pending. I think they were waiting on an autopsy. But they are pretty sure that they're going to get charged with murder. So I wanted to look for an update before we started the podcast, and there wasn't much, but I did find that Oxford was not the biological father of Daniel, and had a previous child neglect charge not too long ago after his kid, I want to say he was 4, was found wandering the streets while he was passed out on drugs in a house or an apartment. So he's already got a nice track record with taking care of children. But the article I read here recently also alluded to it was Cassie that was doing most of the physical abuse on, at least to the 2-year-old, because the injuries he had were, what were they saying? Were on the right side of his body, all on the right side of his body, and Cassie was left-handed. And some of those injuries included some bruising and some fingernail scratches.
Right. So it would have been someone that was left-handed.
That's what they're insinuating. But one of her relatives did come out of the woodwork, Cassie's relatives, and was basically telling the reporters that Cassie wasn't a great mother, but she wasn't physically abusive, at least not when she was around them. They're not from the Vegas area. They moved there. But she was very neglectful, and that the house was nasty and had roaches and stuff everywhere, that she didn't take care of anything. And she said that signs of physical abuse didn't start showing up until she hooked up with Oxford. And then the two moved to Vegas, and Cassie had cut off all contact with her family. So she had not talked to her until she seen her on the news.
Well, that's classic. And I mean, he's 40, she's 20. You know, you can say age is just a number, but, pretty obvious. This is an older dude who's a shithead who's found this young girl with kids that for whatever reason, he's obviously him coming into the equation is what changed the way things are going,
And she wasn't a good mother already.
A good mother to start with, yeah.
But that was it. Keep an eye on that one. I'm sure that next up is they're going to charge him with murder, and we'll find out exactly how this kid died.
Painfully.
I'm sure it's just like most of the others. It's just eventually goes a little bit too far, and they're sitting there going, "Oh my God, I can't believe what we just did," when it was inevitable that it was going to happen. And then they panic and do a shit job of trying to cover it up, and they get caught. And
Yeah, they were horrible with the way they
go
did
their
that.
asses to jail.
Yeah, they did not go about that the right way whatsoever. Charleston, West Virginia. This is just a quick story. This is where these two lovely ladies got into a barroom brawl. And the one here on the right, that's, what's her name? Chelsea Ambrose. She's the meteorologist, or the weather girl, for WSAZ TV.
The Weather Bunny.
Yep. And the lady on the left is Erica Bivens. She's the actual anchor. And they both share, I think it was like a 4 p.m. Time slot. And there's lots of videos and pictures of them together. So I don't know how long they've been working together. But the other day, Miss Bivens went to a bar with her husband. And I didn't put this in the article because I forgot. But I guess they're having a rough patch in their relationship. And they're trying to work on things. So they had went to a bar and had been doing some drinking, where Chelsea was also there, probably also doing some drinking. And supposedly at some point during this time at the bar, the husband and Chelsea found themselves in a conversation to where Chelsea started hitting on him. And he told her he wasn't interested and went back to his wife and told her what Chelsea had done. So when Erica went to go confront Chelsea, that led into a physical altercation where Chelsea actually, I guess, started grappling with Erica, and they ended up taking a tumble. And Erica ended up, well, what they say is she fractured her skull and busted her eardrum.
Damn.
So police were called, and Chelsea was arrested, charged with misdemeanor battery, facing a year in jail. She's been suspended from her job. And I think, did I put this in here? Oh, yeah. Bivens told police she had had problems with Ambrose being aggressive with her in the past. Now, they didn't go into detail what she meant by that, at least the articles I was looking at. But I guess what their meaning is that they've had some, I don't know. I don't want to see it's a woman thing. Co-workers, I don't know, but they've obviously had some altercations of
Totally
some
a woman thing.
Right. So I don't know what kind of problems. They didn't go into details, but it ended with a fractured skull and a ruptured eardrum. I was going to actually try to go over to the TV station, and at the time just to see if there was if they had reported on their own employees, because I thought that would have been really cool had they actually reported on their own employees. But at the time, they had not. I didn't see anything, which was
probably going to try to pretend like it didn't happen.
PR crap, I bet. But I thought it would be cooler had they actually reported it, or have
turn it into a cage match and make some money off of it.
Oh, they could have made some more money if they'd actually had Erica on the next day
wrestling
at 4:00. With a bandage around her head and like her ear bandaged up, and report on her own story. I thought that would have been funny as hell. They'd have gotten a lot of views on that.
No doubt. Well, I know someone who works in the industry, and I don't know myself, but I've been told that the most insane, narcissistic, fucked up people on the planet work in television newsrooms. The talent. I don't know that that's true, but that's what I've been told by someone who knows.
No doubt. I could see
the worst.
That. The only thing I noticed was that they're both very pretty ladies, so I'm not dinging on them. It's just the fact that I don't know if Erica's head is 2 times too big or if Chelsea's is too small. But in all the pictures I've seen, Erica's head is gigantic. Or at least her face is.
Right.
I don't know if you guys can see that picture.
Well, there's a neck disparity too, at least in the one picture.
That's a long neck.
It's almost like the punch 'em dolls that you used to have, the knock 'em sock 'em robots, and one of them's had the head popped up, and the other one still hadn't been hit yet.
Right. I mean, because the Chelsea only looks like she's maybe an inch taller than Erica, but the Erica's chin doesn't start until the top of Chelsea's tits.
Yeah.
That's the neck.
It's got. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's a
Big-ass
neck
neck.
thing. It's a neck thing. Huh. But I thought maybe it was just this picture or proportion, but I think I remember looking at some other ones. I was looking for a big one to put at the bottom here that had them both together, and every one of them, I was like, God damn, Erica's head's kind of big, but maybe you're right. Maybe Chelsea's got a...
Gonna break my website.
All right, so, and then, let's see here. Oh, one of the big ones, and of course it came from Russia, so I have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. This is the one where a 15-year-old allegedly got so pissed off at losing a video game that he went outside of his family's home and used a chainsaw to cut off his own head. And that was basically the entire story. And when I was doing some looking...
There's something similar.
What's that?
Did we talk about this on the last podcast, or was there something similar at that time that had to do...
I know we didn't talk about this one.
We have recently discussed using a chainsaw to cut off someone's head because Morbid was talking about how difficult it is to do.
Yeah,
but I don't remember what the story was.
And I don't know if it was in our own comments, but I know in some other comments, somebody else made a post about the exact video I was talking about where the cartel had used a chainsaw on somebody to decapitate them, and how unbelievably messy and almost impossible that seemed to be, quickly at least. So my guess is, since this was coming from Russia and that the news sites out there were all basically mimicking each other, no doubt this kid killed himself. I have no doubt of that. And I have no doubt that he used a chainsaw. But I think it was probably just a major neck injury that he did. And that's how he killed himself. But what's suspect is why did he kill himself? And did he actually cut off his own head? Now, I know it's surprising to people, but I don't normally work outside. I'm a little allergic to it, so I don't have a lot of, I haven't used a chainsaw a lot, but I'm assuming that the chain does not stay running unless somebody has something activated.
That is correct.
So I don't think it's physically possible to actually lift a chainsaw up to your neck and cut your head completely off.
I've got to think that it would, before it made it, I have no doubt you would kill yourself.
Oh, yeah,
you
absolutely.
would cut yourself badly enough that you'd bleed out, but I've got to think that it would bind up before you got all the way through. I've got to think it would, especially because you're cutting your own throat with it. It's not like you've got a good stance above what you're cutting to where you can hold the saw and make it do what it's supposed to do.
Right, there's no leverage, and I don't know how
exactly.
how the mechanism is that you use to get the chain activated. I don't know if you could actually hold the chainsaw to where you could actually get it all the way through. Like you said, I think if it didn't bind up, as soon as it hit your neck bone and your spinal cord, that's pretty much lights out there anyway. You wouldn't be able to go all the way through.
Yeah, I don't see it happening, but I certainly believe you could kill yourself with it.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Now, the only other way I think you could do it is if you rig something up. Then you could easily do it. You could just lay your neck on it, either from the back or the front, and just let weight handle it. But
make it like a chainsaw guillotine.
Something to that effect, but I would think a 15-year-old who's pissed off about something who's hell-bent on killing himself is not going to take the time to rig something up.
He's not going to do that, no.
Although, we have had people make homemade guillotines out in the woods, actually, and in their rooms. Remember that one, Jaded?
Well, there's a dude that cut one of his arms off with one, I'm remembering.
Yep.
And then went running over to the neighbors and was like, oh, my God, I cut my arm off.
Yeah, we've had
saved him.
We've had homemade guillotines, and we had the one. I think we had two stories, which I always thought was the crazier suicides, where they would tie a rope to their neck, and then they would tie the other end to like a light post or a tree, and then they would get in a car, and then they would just step on the gas.
Yeah.
Damn.
The first one we covered like that had me tripping out for days. Because I had never heard of such a thing, never imagined such a thing. I'm like, God Damn, that's a ballsy way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it would be quick if you thought of everything, because if you didn't, worst case scenario is your dumbass is going to get yanked out the window and now you're paralyzed.
Yeah.
That would be
Bring
my
that
luck.
street light down on your car.
Yeah. So, but anyway, in this particular case, I think he killed himself with a chainsaw, but I think he just did a neck injury. And then one thing, the story is being told and retold, and then now it's he cut his head off. And so, of course, I'm running with that one as well, since that's the headlines they were using.
It's just more of that Russian propaganda that we're awash in now.
Well, a lot of people are curious, too. They keep bringing up the fact, and I did not know this until I did some looking into it, and that was, now I know about Blue Whale and that Momo challenge, these suicide groups that are going on online that some people say is fake, and then other people saying that it's true, that, you know, these groups, I know they exist, but that people are actually killing themselves over it. That the news is just sensationalizing the problem, and it wasn't this big epidemic. But one of the Russian papers that I was looking at said that of 130 suicides of children in Russia between November 2015 and April 2016, almost all of the children were members of one of those online type death groups. And then they said that Major General Alexei Moshkov, head of anti-computer crime K Department in Russia Interior Ministry, he said that in 2017, a total of 1,339 online suicide groups were uncovered with a collective total of 12,000 members. And they've also made like 19 or something arrests of people who were running these groups. These online groups. So, and if anybody's not familiar with them, at least from a little bit I can see, they're basically challenge groups to where they pick somebody in some type of fashion, and they're instructed to do increasingly more stressful things to themselves that ultimately will end up with them taking their own lives, and that people are
Kids are
following
fucking
stuff.
stupid.
Yeah, I'd like to see how I don't know if there's been a documentary made on this. I'm sure Netflix is all over it. Man, have you noticed how many damn original programming Netflix now has? I can't keep up with their shit anymore.
Oh, they're going nuts, man.
They got everything. And now it used to be normally, and I'm not dinging on Netflix, I actually love the service, but it used to be normally when Netflix put something out, it was normally average to above average to excellent. It was up on the other end of the scale when it comes to quality. But now they got so much stuff, man. I've watched some stuff that was just horrible.
Well, that's what happens when you try to expand and you're not as selective about what you're choosing to do. They
killing it though.
Well, I tell you, they picked up Trailer Park Boys, and I thought that was a brilliant move.
Yeah, they're snagging a lot of things. I can't remember if it's them. I think it is Netflix. They just picked up one of my my favorite video games. They just picked that up to do a series out of, and last I heard they'd hired the guy that played Superman, and he was in Mission Impossible. Carvel, I don't remember his name. He's now going to play the main character of that video game.
Witcher?
Yeah, Witcher. Yeah, they're actually going to do a TV show.
Looking forward to that.
Well, they got some people up in arms at the moment because Ciri, who is his daughter in the books, because these are based off the actual books, not the video game. I'm sorry, but the books that the video games are made off of. But they're only hiring an ethnic woman to play his daughter Ciri. So now you got people all up in arms about that. So I can't wait to see the controversy that's going to bring. See here, Kennewick, Washington, another Washington. This was the story that you sent me. Jaded actually sent me this story. She was working, so she sent it and said, "Hey, Morbid, a dude raped a beaver." And I was like, "Oh, you got to be shitting me. That can't be true." And it was actually true. And so I had all this stuff lined up in my head because the way it was first phrased that he had sexually assaulted a dead beaver. And I have a running history of reporting on people that like to have sex with dead animals. And so I was really looking forward to doing one that involved a beaver because that was a new animal. Not a new animal for the site, but a new animal that somebody had sexually assaulted.
Always nice to check another box off.
Yeah, exactly. So we figured we would add the Beaver, a dead Beaver, as a sexual assault victim on the site. But the more I started reading about it, it actually was kind of, the whole thing was just fucked up, and it kind of depressed me. So I just put the facts in and just let the commenters have their way with all their Wally jokes or whatever they wanted to do. It was very low hanging fruit in the jokes departments, but they were there. They could have been done, but
literally they write themselves.
They really do. So and what happened was it happened at a Washington park. I think it was in the evening. A woman saw a beaver get run over by a car. The lady went to go try to help the beaver out because the beaver was still alive. So she wrapped it up in a blanket. But she didn't have a way to transport it. So she went to her home, and I'm assuming it was close by, but went to her home to get a container or a box. But when she came back, oh, Lord, she found 35-year-old Richard Delp laying on top of the animal, and that the animal, when she left, was on its stomach, but now it was on its back.
He was dealt deep up in it.
Well, that's the weird thing. It just depends on who you ask, but she first thought, obviously, like anybody probably thought, that the guy was trying to help the animal in some fashion, but until she walked up and seen that
doing CPR,
something aside from what he ended up was actually doing. But his pants were they were unbuckled, and she was like, so she asked, she said, what did you do to him? And he replied, it's not a him, it's a her. So the woman ended up calling police, and who came out. And Delp didn't go nowhere, and I guess they have a long history with Delp. The beaver was dead by this time. It had died. And for the rest of the information, I went off a Facebook post, and I had to scroll through a bunch of shit to find it. But this is what the woman said who actually found the beaver. And I'm going to have to go through some of her spelling. But it says,
use of numbers for letters.
Yeah, I'm just going to I'll try to decipher it. But it says, they were asking, somebody had asked, was the beaver still alive? And so this is what she was responding back to. She says, yes, he was. I tried to save him and went home to grab a bin and figured, she keeps calling him a him. And she knows it's a her. Gender.
It's her, damn it.
Hold on one second. I'm going to make sure that the stream's going back again. And now there it is. We almost made it through an entire podcast without any technical difficulties, and this one was beyond my control. This is fucking Spectrum up to their daily tricks with my internet connection, randomly rebooting every fucking day.
What dicks?
I called them about it a few days ago, and it turned out that my modem at the time, they had put in what they call quarantine. And I was like, why is it in quarantine? And they go, well, somebody in your household downloaded seasons 1 through 6 of The Office. I was like, what? How's that happen?
What are you talking about? What do you mean? How do you even do that?
I was like, other people live in your house? I'm like, oh, yeah, got some young kids live here. And they was like, you need to go talk to them and bring up terms like Pirate Bay and popcorn and turret. And I was like, what are those? What does that even mean?
You know that shit's on Hulu, right?
So anyway, I walked back there. I walked back to my kid, and I was like, you son of a bitch. And I was like, well, I guess my shitty internet connection's because of one of you dumbasses. I'm not downloading the fucking Office. Anyway, so I don't know if that's the cause of it, but they put it out of quarantine. But unless we're busted for something else, I've been just having daily problems with the modem rebooting. So I'll try to cut that out of the podcast and just repost it later. But I don't know how long that was. It wasn't too bad, right? Like a minute?
It was maybe a little bit longer than a minute, but it wasn't too terribly long.
All right, I'll cut that out at a later date. But anyway, point being is, I don't know how far we got before I got cut off, but she had found him.
You were starting to read her crazed Facebook babble.
I gotcha. Well, she basically said she found it hurt and alive. I called many places to find someone to take him. When I got back, I found a man on top of him, and when he rolled over, I asked, what are you doing to him? And he said, it's not a him, it's a her, and realized his punts His pants were unbuttoned and unzipped, and I called him out, and he said, "It's just a beaver." Like I said, the jokes were just all over the place. Then called police, and he admitted to them that he was fingering it. And later on, when police took pictures, its genitals were swollen and other gory things. It was hard to see that, especially alone. So,
because if someone else had been there, it would have not been as bad to see.
You want to see that shit in a crowd, you know.
Yeah.
yeah.
I want my homies to be there when I'm watching someone bang a beaver. Stupid people.
Yeah. Well, they police arrested Delp. He admitted it, and they also found him in possession of meth. He's been charged with animal cruelty and narcotics possession and being held without bail. Now, as you can imagine, this generated a shitload of different opinions and comments on Facebook and elsewhere on what should be done to this guy. And that's when I started doing some digging around and seeing some of the other comments that I was forced to scroll through to find this lady's take on what had happened. And there were a lot of people in there that knew this guy. And from what I could gather, this dude's always had problems all the way back in high school, and he came from like a real bad family life. And he's suffered from mental illness for a long, long time, which led, as usual, to drug addiction and now homelessness. So a couple of the people that posted that either knew him from school or worked with him when he actually could hold a job when he was younger were actually, they felt bad for the animal, but and feel he should be punished, but hopefully that he'll get some help that he needs, because supposedly this guy's got a pretty long rap sheet from various crimes, probably born from drug addiction and homelessness and mental illness. But he just keeps getting let out, put back in, let out, put back in.
It's since a lot of the legal changes that have been made, a lot of them, I think, in the 70s, it's tough to keep people locked up anymore if they don't want to be locked up. You know, you used to could institutionalize people and there wasn't jack they could do about it. But, you know, the way it is now, there's a lot of crazy people running around because they can't keep them locked up.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the guy that helped get that bill passed, that deinstitutionalized the country, that guy says now, looking back on it, that he really thinks that he hurt the general public more than he helped it the way he was trying to. At least that's what I read from somewhere. But
well, and I understand, you know, the mental institutions used to be really, really horrendous places in this country, and you know, we being America, we are always, I think, try to be cognizant of individual rights, and so I understand, you know, why things could have been changed, but certainly it hasn't been for the good for anybody. And obviously, this guy, if he was locked up, he wouldn't be doing the things that he's doing, which would be good for society, but it would also be good for him too. Well, I mean, what the hell kind of life do you have when this is the kind of thing that you do?
Yeah, I think we just went from one extreme, and then we just jumped all the way to the other. And there was definitely room for improvement, but I think we threw the baby out with the bathwater with what they ended up doing. But exactly. I don't know if anything's changing with that. I know over the years we've gotten worse and worse, not just with mental illness, but with drug addiction in general. I was watching some documentary a while back and was totally shocked with how the United States used to handle drug addiction. And it was crazy how much they actually would care for people and help them get off it. And it wasn't a stigma. It wasn't something that you had to necessarily hide. You weren't shamed for it. You were actually, people were a lot more sympathetic and compassionate about the issue and get you help for it. And now there just doesn't seem to be much of a recourse for it. And even if there is any, most people don't got the money to pay for it.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, the methadone, just talking about opiates, methadone is huge money. That's legalized drug dealing. It's the exact same thing. And they make a lot of money off of that. And the bastards that make methadone, they make some of the same drugs that people get addicted to in the first place, where they end up needing methadone. So I think part of that is probably because it's big money now, and it probably didn't used to be, but it's a huge industry. And,
oh yeah,
you know.
Well, this big opiate addiction. These opioid addictions that we got going on right now. Supposedly, the man that actually is a part of the companies that create the drugs these people are addicted to. Supposedly is set up to benefit from the cure, the fixes.
Right.
I didn't read the details on that, but
well, the methadone is, I'm sure, part of that story.
But it's the same thing when weren't the tobacco companies also involved in the nicotine patches? You know, a lot of these.
I'm sure somehow or other.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It was. I remember even back in computers, it was like virus scanners were always accused of the ones making the viruses. People were using the virus scanners to catch. You know,
it's like that Three Stooges episode where they went in and put ants and moths and shit in the people's houses, and then showed up on the front door as pest exterminators.
It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. So yeah, I might keep an eye on this one. I don't really. I guess I'm kind of curious what they end up doing to the guy. What kind of sentence they'll give him, or if he's found sane, for that matter. But yeah, he wasn't my. He wasn't on the level of the dead deer fucker we used to report on back in the day. I actually felt a little bit bad for this guy. Well, and the Beaver too. Imagine the Beaver. You get reminds me of that Sam Kinison sketch when he's talking about
just when you think it's over.
Yeah, with the necrophile funeral home guy that you finally die and get some peace and rest, and then some dude's fucking you in the ass. This poor Beaver got ran over by a damn car and lived, and that was what it ended up getting, some dude's finger, and I guess it was a her. And then lastly, I have no idea.
Well, someone in the comments, and I have no idea if this person actually knows what they're talking about, but someone in the comments said that that they were an trained animal, something or other, and said that it's really tough to tell. It's tough to tell a beaver's gender from the external genitalia. So they were saying this guy had no idea.
He may not have.
They didn't make any claim. They just said it's difficult for even a trained person to visually tell the difference between a male and a female beaver.
Yeah, but the difference was this guy wasn't using eyesight alone. He was using his fingers.
Well, that's true.
He may have found out real quickly.
And that's how they do it on gators, according to what I saw on Swamp People.
Is that show still on?
I don't know. I watched the first few seasons. It was really entertaining, but I didn't keep up with it. But they had one guy on there. They were doing catch and release, and they were tagging gators, and this guy was saying, you have to stick your finger inside the hole and feel around to tell if it's a male or a female. And I'm thinking to myself, watching this guy do this, I'm thinking, number one, if you didn't have a badge on you, you'd be going to jail for what you just did. And number two, way the hell too much about this.
Yeah, I don't think that's a profession I could probably do. Just the thought of sticking your finger up in there, and what are you feeling for? I guess it would be a penis, an alligator penis.
I guess so.
And
he wasn't specific. He just said you can just tell.
That has to be it, right? You would stick your finger up that scaly hole, and then if you felt a dick, it's a boy, and if you felt nothing, and it's a girl. I guess that's it.
That would have to be.
Spartanburg, South Carolina. This was the funeral home owners that were up to the shady practices we've reported on before, where they don't do what they say they're going to do with their bodies.
Yeah, this one's just low down. It was the First Family Funeral Home. And let me tell you, if you've got to overcompensate with me on the first impression, I'm just not believing you at all. If you got to tell me you're a Christian as soon as we meet, I need to watch my wallet and my ass. If you name your business as Honest John's Used Cars, I know you're a chiseler. And if you name your funeral home First Family and your motto is where family comes first, I know absolutely, positively, family's going to come last. And I'm just expecting some sort of twisted, unscrupulous shit. And in this case, I'm right. In March 2015, a gentleman named Fred Parker, a really nice seeming fella from the video, very down to earth. He took his wife, Mary Alice Pitts Moore, to the hospital. She had to go there for dialysis, and she got sick and never actually made it back out of the hospital. She died of complications from diabetes. So her family went to this First Family outfit to get her cremated. That was what she wanted. And they talked, and they agreed to put $1,000 down and do a payment plan for the rest. They had a visitation at the Greenwood branch of this First Family outfit. And then that was it. And when they interviewed the guy, he said that he tried unsuccessfully to contact someone at the funeral home later, I guess to retrieve her ashes, and couldn't get a hold of anyone. And that eventually the that particular branch of the funeral home shut its doors. So fast forward to February 2018, an employee found this lady's body, which should have been cremated 3 years ago, found it in a storage room at the First Family facility in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's on a board on the floor, covered with blankets, surrounded by air fresheners. So the worker reports it to the state, and good for them. And the county coroner's office and the state labor officials searched the facility. I'm guessing they went to the labor guys first. So this lady's remains were so badly decomposed that it took a couple of weeks for them to identify her. And once they did, the Spartanburg County coroner, a guy named Rusty Clevenger, he'd traveled down to Saluda, South Carolina to break the news to her family, to talk to him in person, which I thought was pretty classy. And needless to say, they're upset because they basically got to relive her death all over again. You know, she's been dead for 3 years. They've sort of gotten past that. Then all of a sudden, they're right back in the middle of it again. So the funeral home owners, Roderick Cummings and Lawrence Meadows, they've both been charged with desecration of human remains, and Spartanburg County grand jury returned indictments against them in August. So they're both looking at up to 10 years of jail time and fines up to $5,000. And there's also a lawsuit against them and two other guys, Jerome Madison and Zebulon Young. The lawsuit says that they were involved in the business as well. And the family is suing for, quote, actual punitive and exemplary damages for fraud, negligence, unfair trade practices, improper disposal of human remains, and other causes of action. So that's pretty much the whole kitchen sink there. And there's been allegations that the family didn't uphold their end of the bargain, that they didn't pay as required, as the lingo is in the world of high finance. But that's not, in my view, a reason to let someone's mother rot like a piece of meat. You know, there's a lot of other better ways that you can deal with that. And I'm betting these guys are screwed on the lawsuit. They're definitely screwed on the charges. They're definitely going to jail. So just how absolutely disrespectful you can be. And there was a story I'm remembering. This was on the Demon years back, but the guys down in Georgia that had just been planting bodies everywhere. It was a same thing, a little family-owned funeral home, and they just started, and instead of doing cremations, they were just burying them in the woods, wasn't it?
I don't remember exactly, but they were doing basically what you just said. They were kind of disposing of the bodies in any way they felt that didn't cost money. Definitely not using the money that they had been given.
Right. Yeah. Well, these guys, they got them dead to rights. I mean, they there's no getting out of this one. So.
Nope. And let's see here. I think this one's not in our top 10 list, and I'm sure it will be next week. So we may be talking about this again, but maybe it'll be with the update. And this is with the possible cat serial killer that's out, and also out there in Washington.
Crazy, wild stuff going on in Washington. And this one is sort of unique. I think maybe someone who knows more about true crime than I do can dredge up something that I'm not remembering. But so basically what's going on is police in Lacey, Washington think that they've got a serial cat killer operating in their town. And they've got pretty good reason to think that, because since February, people's pet cats have been turning up dead and mutilated in the exact same manner. The killer's cutting them open with a scalpel or an X-Acto knife or some other very sharp, thin blade, and taking the spine, and then leaving the remains in public places, almost like they're putting them on display. And the body count hit 13 on August 31st. And, you know, the conventional wisdom and the way it usually works in the development of a psychopathic killer is when you see someone killing animals, then that's an individual that's developing, and the killing animals is a step along the way. It's part of the evolutionary process of this psychopathic killer thing. And eventually they will, quote unquote, graduate to killing humans, so to speak. And this one just doesn't feel like that to me. The number of killings with so little evidence, the fact that the technique isn't evolving or changing, the fact that there's this fixed ritualistic component, which is the removal of the spine, all of that looks to me like a matured, fully evolved killer. And it's got me wondering if maybe that's what this guy is, and his kink is just cats for some reason, and he's not going to graduate to humans because that's not what he wants to do. And that would be unusual. I can't think of a fully formed serial killer that just killed animals like that. And that's what I was saying earlier, and I'm sure that there has been, and I'm sure someone can say, well, this person or that person. But that's just what it feels like to me. And the other thing that's weird about it, as far as mementos go, the spine is just weird. I can't think of having seen that before either, other than obviously the movie Predator. But one of the commenters on the site when we published the story said that one of the more recent victims was a 12-year-old feral cat, and they're usually pretty good fighters, and this one apparently put up a good fight and took a chunk out of the guy. So they've got blood and skin. They got DNA on this guy. And then that made me think about the way this guy does what he's doing, his MO. How do you even catch a feral cat to kill it? You know what I'm saying? How do you catch a cat in general to kill it? But how are you going to catch a feral cat? That's a pretty good damn trick. But
yeah,
anyhow,
they're not
just
animals
odd.
I'd want to mess with. Even domestic ones, I don't want to mess with. I'd rather tangle with a dog than a cat for sure.
What do y'all think? Stories you've written. I mean, you've both obviously been around the site since there's been a site.
Personally, I think it's kids or a kid. I think it's going to end up being somebody young. That's my personal take on it. It's just normally when we have, at least that's in our experience. Of course, I can't speak for the world as a whole, but just on the stories that we've posted. Whenever you have some retarded stuff like this going on repeatedly, it always seems to be a kid or a teenager, obviously a fucked up one, but that's what it always ends up being. The only thing that makes this different, like you pointed out, it wasn't just the killing of the cats, because like normally, and Jaded, correct me if I'm wrong, normally this ended up them killing it with like crossbows or BB guns. They were terrorizing or firecrackers. They would terrorize an area by doing something like that. But this would be the first that I've heard where if it is true what they're saying, that they're removing the spines from the animal. That's what throws this whole thing into a totally in a U-turn for me. Is I guess it could be anybody's guess. I don't remember anybody going past just killing the animal, not actually mutilating it, and specifically mutilating it.
I don't remember anybody taking any body parts, but I imagine there's a teenager with 13 spines hanging like a fucking mobile on his ceiling.
Doing something with them.
Yeah, now that does make it an odd one. I went to go look to see if there's any updates while you were talking about that, and there isn't. There's just more news sites talking about it now. But it did say that there were 2 Facebook groups opened up dedicated to this particular subject where people are passing information back and forth. Did you ever see any of those? Oh yeah, you don't use Facebook.
Yeah, I'm not allowed on Facebook, so I haven't seen it. I do know from, and this was in the article, and I actually linked to this webpage. There was at the when I wrote the article, and it's probably gone up since then, but there was a combined $36,000 reward for information leading to an arrest in the case. And like I said, it's probably gone up. In fact, I'll pop that up and look and see. But I don't see but that they're going to catch this guy sooner than later. If you look at the map of where all this is going on, it's not over a very big area. It's got all this scrutiny now, and it's someone's going to see something. And when they see something and they get this guy and they get DNA from him, there's going to be no dodging it. You're not gonna get around that DNA.
I just found the one group. I'll post a link if anybody wants to follow it. It says group supporting the tireless efforts of Thurston County, Washington State's Joint Animal Services Officer, blah blah blah, and the Serial Cat Mutilator Task Force. Until an arrest is made, this page will post most media coverage. Your patience is appreciated while this page is under construction being built, blah, blah, blah.
The media coverage they're not posting is probably the demon.
Oh, yeah. They're not going to hit us.
The reward's up to $46,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's more money going into it. They'll get this guy.
Yeah, that's the biggest group. That's got 531 members in it. I guess I have to join to actually see anything. I'm not positive. I'm not joining it, but anyway, I'll post a link to it in both chats just in case anybody wants to keep an eye on it and wants to join it. I'm in enough groups. which is another thing that could probably get me in a lot of trouble with some of them. You may remember it, or maybe not, but one thing I don't like about Facebook is how you can be automatically joined to groups. You ever have that happen to you, Jaded, to where all of a sudden you find out you're in a
goddamn time?
It's just really, whatever. And if you're not paying attention to it, you could be in a really fucked up group.
And then you're going to get popped for something later on, and they're going to say, he was on 5 dozen jihadist Facebook groups.
That's correct.
Like,
that's exactly what could happen.
Yeah.
I think they actually changed that to where now you have to actually join the group. You can't just be thrown into a group.
Zuckerberg doesn't get to pick for you anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that people were pretty outraged about that because some stupid shit started showing up in their feeds, and I think he listened this time. I think there's different permissions now.
I didn't join NAMBLA. I didn't fucking join NAMBLA.
Well, that's not what your Facebook's saying,
why.
buddy.
Yeah.
But
my experience with Facebook lasted about 30 minutes, and I joined to follow a bunch of local breweries because a lot of them post what they're doing on Facebook, and that's the only place they post it. And within 30 minutes of signing up and following just all these breweries, I had gotten locked out for some unspecified security violation / specific suspicious behavior. And they did an investigation and came back 2 days later, and they're like, nope, we're terminating your account. And I have no idea what the hell I did.
Oh, wow, that's kind of crazy.
When you try to add too many things too quickly, it raises a red flag.
Well, it did, and I was like, okay, well. And then they wanted they wanted a copy of my driver's license, and I'm like, yeah, that's definitely not happening.
Yeah, they did that to me. I had to actually do that. To actually keep
for the business, yeah.
Yeah, I was absolutely livid, and there was nothing I could do. They had me by the balls. I was tempted to delete my account and the Dreamin Demon Facebook page and everything, but unfortunately, until things shift and change, which it looks like they finally are, until there's alternatives, I don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, and I do, so I was able to just walk away. But yeah, when I say I'm not allowed on Facebook, I was there 30 minutes and they kicked me the hell out for being a security risk or something or other. I'm like, okay. I don't know how you found out who the hell I am, but okay.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Facebook. I don't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it when it first came around, and I really didn't enjoy it when it actually became the go-to.
Almost a monopoly.
I hate the way it's wormed its way into it's people's only way of communicating out to other people. Especially some of my friends are guilty of it, to where they'll be offended because I didn't hear about an injury and didn't call them because they were hurt. And I'm like, I didn't know anything about it. And then every time I put it on Facebook, I'm like, well, bitch, I don't check your fucking Facebook. I don't check anybody's Facebook. I don't care about your lives that much. You would think that if there was a major injury that you wanted people to know about, that you would call and tell them, like personally. But
people are lazy anymore.
Well, I think it's brought out, and I know we saw that with our forums, where slowly but surely a lot of members deviated, and some of it was because of me, but some of them, not just our forums, a lot of forums were having problems with retaining members, because when Facebook became popular, it brought up the narcissist in everybody, and then all of a sudden now everybody thought that everybody gave a shit what they were talking about. And you still see that to this day. Anybody with Facebook, just check your feed. It's about, at least mine, and admittedly, because of the website, I have a bunch of quote-unquote friends, but it's about 95% retardation, and then 5% somebody selling something. I rarely find anything interesting on Facebook. Now, our group is pretty good, only because they post a lot of crime stories in there, so I do like that. Other than that, I really have no need for it.
I have no opinion.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, you'll take my Facebook out of my cold dead hands.
I know. And she used to hate it.
I have pruned it to where I kind of tolerate it now. certain times of the week I can't look at it, when something big is on the fucking news. I can't look at it, but I've pruned it down to pretty much the people I have on it. I kind of like most of them. Some of them I just follow just so I know what they're up to.
You drank the Kool-Aid. Poor thing.
That's right. I like Kool-Aid.
And I am a little bit biased because, admittedly, like I just said, I do have thousands of quote-unquote friends because of the website. If it was pared down to just people I actually gave a shit about what they thought, I'd have like 5 people on it anyway. So I still probably wouldn't use it. But anyway, what time is it? I don't have the time up.
It's 12:07.
Oh wow. Minus the 2 minutes we went under. It looks like that was a quick speed through.
Not bad.
Well, you guys stay on the line with me just for 1 second here. Hey, everybody. Again, thanks for showing back up again to another podcast. As far as I know, we'll be back on next Saturday. Are you guys still clear?
So far.
Okay. So we'll keep it on the schedule for Saturday, and y'all have a good rest of the weekend. And I guess Metal, you're out next week, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna be out of pocket. I'm gonna be traveling all week, and I'm not gonna have access to a computer, so you won't see any little cutesy write-ups from me, and I won't be on the podcast, but I will be back in full force the week after that.
Oh, cool. Well, thank God Jaded said she would step up. Man, that's why I like her so much.
I didn't hear that bitch.
Yeah, so cool. So cool of her. So, all right, guys. Hey, look, thanks for helping me out with the podcast, and thanks for you guys coming back out again, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Y'all take
Bye,
care.
everyone.